Olympic athletes submit their bodies to grueling training, and then they soar around the world to meet the competition. American East Coast athletes traveled 5 time zones to get to London. West Coast athletes leapt over 8 and increased the odds that they'll get a cold, if not the gold. So says a study in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Researchers tracked 259 elite rugby players in the 2010 Super 14 rugby tournament. The 16 weeks of games took place in Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand. On average, there were 21 illnesses per 1,000 player days, but players in their home countries endured only 15 illnesses per 1,000 days. And when a team traveled more than 5 time zones in either direction, illness rates more than doubled. The number dropped back to 10 after they flew back home. The illnesses were primarily infections, such as respiratory or intestinal illnesses. A weakened immune system does not appear to be a factor. The researchers suggest that differences in temperature, pollution, allergens, and different foods and local microbes are the likeliest culprits. One more element that might give European Olympians a home field advantage.
Kids from the ages of 2 to 19 consume about 7 trillion calories in sugar-sweetened beverages per year, according to Steve Gortmacher of the Harvard School of Public Health. He spoke at the Obesity Society annual scientific meeting in San Antonio on September 23rd. 7 trillion is a lot of calories in sugar-sweetened beverages. At, for example, 50 cents per can, it's about $24 billion a year. All those dollars in sugary calories are stoking the childhood obesity epidemic. Currently in the U.S., about 17% of children and adolescents are obese. That's more than 12.5 million kids. And new research in the British Medical Journal suggests that obese children will have much higher risk factors for cardiovascular disease as adults. Even as kids, their hearts are changing shape to look like those of adults at risk for heart disease. But the good news is that simply cutting out about 64 calories a day from kids' diets could start to level out the steep rise in childhood obesity. That's equivalent to less than half a can of most non-diet sodas.
Just like corporations, stars too can engage in mergers and acquisitions. A new study has identified a pair of white dwarf stars heading toward a merger. White dwarfs are the hot, super-dense remnants of spent stars. In a binary system called J0651, 2 white dwarfs circle each other very rapidly. The binary pairing completes an orbit in less than 13 minutes. And that already rapid orbital dance is speeding up as the 2 white dwarfs spiral in on each other. Each year, their orbital period shrinks by 0.3 milliseconds. That's actually a pretty dramatic change on astronomical timescales. In about 1 million years, the white dwarfs will get so close that the larger one will start to cannibalize its smaller companion. Before long, the 2 stars will likely become one. The study appears in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. The tightly wound white dwarf binary should also be radiating gravitational waves, ripples in the fabric of space and time. But today's gravitational wave detectors are not sensitive enough to detect them. And that's okay. Astronomers have another 1 million years before things get really interesting to build an instrument that's up to the task.
Every time you inhale, oxygen passes from your windpipe to your lungs and on into your bloodstream. But what if your windpipe was blocked? Getting the gas straight to your blood could save your life. Wait, put down that syringe. A large air bubble in a blood vessel can kill you. But what if the bubbles were only a few millionths of a meter in diameter? Researchers coated tiny amounts of oxygen gas with fatty molecules to create microparticles. Suspended in solution, the microparticles formed a foam containing 50 to 90% oxygen. In a beaker of blood, the foam was able to quickly transfer its oxygen to the cells. Then the researchers tested it in animals. Normally, a blocked windpipe cuts off the blood supply of oxygen, leading to brain damage and death. But when rabbits with blocked windpipes received injections of the microparticles, their blood oxygen levels and heart rates remained stable. The work is in the journal Science Translational Medicine. The foam may someday buy time for human patients, so that even someone with a closed airway can breathe easy.
Dogs aren't just man's best friend. Previous studies have shown that kids with dogs are less likely to develop asthma. Now a new study may show how, if results from mice apply to us. The work was presented at a meeting of the American Society for Microbiology. The study tests what's called the hygiene hypothesis. The idea is that extreme cleanliness may actually promote disease later on. Researchers collected dust from homes that had a dog. They fed that house dust to mice. They then infected the mice with a common childhood infection called respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV. Mice who ate the dog dust were protected against RSV infection symptoms, like inflamed, mucus-coated airways, suggesting exposure helped them stave off the virus. Those mice also had more diverse communities of gut bacteria than control mice did. Researchers say our pets' microbes may colonize our gut, too, and help the immune system learn to respond to infections. That's important because when kids develop severe RSV, their risk of asthma goes up. So next time Buster sheds all over the couch, think of it as a bonus dose of probiotics.
If you've ever spent time watching chimps at the zoo, you've probably wondered, what are they thinking? Well, the answer might be simple. Could be they're fixing to hurl a rock at your head. One chimp in Sweden actually hides stones and other potential projectiles and then acts casual before chucking them at visitors, behavior that suggests an unprecedented degree of primate planning and deception. His duplicity is described in the journal Public Library of Science 1. The chimp, named Santino, had long been known to fling things at annoying onlookers. For years, he's calmly gathered stones and chunks of concrete, stacking them in piles, which he visits when some human particularly irks him. But lately Santino's gotten more cunning. For one, he's taken to concealing his arsenal beneath little heaps of hay that he carries out from his enclosure. And his attacks are also more stealthy. Santino used to pitch a fit before pitching a stone, but now he acts all nonchalant, even thoughtfully munching an apple before letting the missiles fly. The researchers say the data show that chimps are capable of social planning and deception. Unless, of course, that's just what the chimps want us to think. Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Huff.
One family generally dines on Chinese takeout while their neighbors eat home-cooked meatloaf. You say potato, I say potato. And humans aren't the only primate species with cultural differences. Even in the same environment, different groups of chimpanzees use different tools. The work is in Current Biology. Chimps living in a national park in Côte d'Ivoire like eating kula nuts. They hammer them open with stone or wood. At the beginning of the season, the nutshells are harder, so you might expect all the chimps in the forest to initially use stone hammers and then switch to easy-to-find wooden tools when the nut cracking requires less force. But researchers examined the tool use of 3 different chimpanzee communities and found that despite sharing genes and a habitat, each group chose their hammers differently. For example, one group preferred stone hammers throughout the kula nut season. Another gradually transitioned from primarily stone to primarily wooden tools, and the third community switched from stone to wood more quickly. Hammer size also varied from group to group. As a chimp might explain, you say tomato, I say...
Okay. Political activists and thinkers across a broad array of ideologies, from libertarians to social liberals to the hard left, are intrigued or even keen. The Cato Institute, an American think tank which spends much of its time calling for a smaller state, published a sympathetic analysis of policy in 2015. It feels that, though it might prefer a world with no government redistribution, a basic income is the simplest. Migrant children who do attend schools in cities usually get a worse education than their city-born counterparts. State schools that accept migrant pupils often operate what Pei Chia-lan of National Taiwan University refers to as apartheid school models. In these, migrant children are taught separately from urban ones in the same school and are even kept apart from them in the playground. To biomedical researchers all over the world, twins offer a precious opportunity to untangle the influence of genes and environment, of nature and nurture. Because identical twins come from a single fertilized egg that splits into two, they share virtually the same genetic code. Any differences between them, one twin having younger-looking skin, for example, must be due to environmental factors, such as less time spent in the sun. Language often seems so skillfully drafted that one can hardly imagine it as anything other than the perfected handiwork of a master craftsman. How else could this instrument make so much out of barely 3 dozen measly morsels of sound? In themselves, these configurations of mouth, PF, BV, TD, KG, SH, A, E, and so on, amount to nothing more than a few haphazard spits and splutters, random noises with no meaning, no ability to express, no power to explain.
The other teams tried to collaborate on building the structure and descended into confusion, with everyone getting in each other's way. Our team leader solved the challenge brilliantly. She simply asked everyone in the team to move a piece a few centimetres to comply with the rule, and then let the person in the team with an aptitude for puzzles like this build it alone.
For millions of years, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have been regulated, in part, by a natural partnership between plants and microbes, tiny organisms in the soil. Plants absorb CO2 from the air and transform it into sugars and other carbon-based substances. While a proportion of these carbon products remain in the plant, some transfer from the roots to fungi and soil microbes, which store the carbon in the soil.
Living in the Antarctic hasn't always been so comfortable. Snow buildups caused enormous problems for 4 previous stations on the same site, which were buried and finally crushed by the weight. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but these buildings became a huge challenge to architects, who finally came up with a remarkable solution. The buildings are placed on platforms, which can be raised above the changing snow level on legs which are extendable.
The main reason why MSG is more commonly used in Japanese meals is tradition. For many thousands of years, the Japanese have incorporated a type of seaweed known as kombu in their cooking, as they discovered it had the ability to make food taste better. But it wasn't until 1908 that the ingredient in kombu, which was responsible for the improvement in flavor, was actually discovered to be glutamate by scientists working there.